Start doing this to improve your English. There was a time when learning English felt like trying to hold water in your hands. The more you tried to memorize rules, the faster everything slipped away. Pages were filled with grammar, notebooks crowded with difficult words, and still, when it was time to speak, silence appeared. Not because the mind was empty, but because it was too full of fear, too full of thinking, too full of trying to be perfect. And that is where the real problem began. One day, something changed. Not because of a new book or a new teacher, but because of a simple decision. Instead of trying to learn English, the focus shifted to living in English. It started small, almost invisible. A sentence spoken alone in a quiet room, a thought whispered in English instead of the native language. At first, it felt strange, like wearing someone else's clothes. But slowly, it became comfortable. The journey was not about big steps. It was about small. Daily actions repeated again and again, and every morning. Instead of scrolling endlessly, a short video in English played. Not for learning, but for understanding. No pressure to catch every word, just listening like you listen to music. Some words were clear, others were not, but that did not matter. What mattered was consistency. Then came the habit of speaking, even without a partner. Describing the room, explaining what was happening, talking about plans for the day. It felt silly at first, but something powerful was happening. The brain was building connections, turning passive knowledge into active ability. Mistakes were everywhere, but they stopped being enemies and became guides. Reading also changed. Instead of difficult books, simple stories became the choice. Stories that were easy to follow, stories that made you forget you were learning. Because when you enjoy something, you stay longer with it. And time, more than talent, is what creates improvement. There was also a moment of realization. Improvement does not come from doing something once, doing something daily. Even 10 minutes, if done every day, becomes stronger than 2 hours done once a week. English stopped being a subject and became a part of life, just like eating, walking, or breathing. Another powerful shift happened when perfection was ignored. Waiting to speak perfectly was like waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. So speaking started, broken sentences, wrong grammar, missing words, but real communication dabbed, and surprisingly, people understood. Not everything, but enough. And that was enough to continue. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The change was slow, almost invisible, but real. Words came faster. Sentences became clearer, and confidence grew quietly. Not because everything was mastered, but because fear was reduced. The truth is simple. Improvement in English does not come from memorizing more. It comes from using more. From listening daily, speaking daily, thinking daily. From making English a part of your everyday life, instead of a task you do. Sometimes. So if you truly want to improve your English, start doing this. Start small, start simple, but most importantly, start now. Speak even when no one is listening. Listen even when you do not understand everything. Read even if it feels slow. Ambend and do it every single day. Because one day, without even noticing when it happened, you will speak. Not perfectly, but naturally. And that is when you will realize you were not learning English all this time. You were becoming someone who lives in it. There was a quiet evening when everything felt stuck again. The same words, the same struggle, the same feeling of not moving forward. It was like standing in the same place no matter how hard you tried to walk. But that evening did not end in frustration. It ended in a small decision that did not look powerful at all. The decision was this: stop chasing progress and start creating a habit. The next morning, nothing dramatic happened. No sudden fluency, no magical confidence. Just a simple action. A sentence spoken out loud while making tea. Not perfect, not even correct, but spoken. That moment was different because it was real. It was not practice for the future. It was action in the present. Days started to take a new shape. Instead of waiting for motivation, there was a routine. Wake up. Listen to English for a few minutes. Not carefully, not seriously, just naturally. Like background sound. At first, it felt useless, like nothing was being learned. But slowly, something inside started to change. Sounds became familiar. Words started to repeat. The mind began to recognize patterns without effort. Then came a strange but powerful habit. Talking to yourself, not in your native language, but in English. While walking, while eating, while doing small tasks. Describing everything around you. I am opening the door. I am feeling tired today. I need to finish my work. These simple sentences became the foundation of something much bigger. Because speaking is not built from big speeches. It is built from small, repeated expressions. There were still moments of doubt. Moments when nothing felt improved. Banned moments when it felt like going backward. But instead of stopping, the focus stayed on one rule: do it anyway. Improvement is not a straight line. It moves slowly, sometimes quietly, sometimes invisibly. Another change appeared in the way mistakes were seen. Before, mistakes were signs of failure. Now, they became signs of progress. Every wrong sentence meant you were trying. Every hesitation meant you were thinking in English instead of translating. That alone was a victory. Time passed, and something unexpected happened. English started appearing in thoughts automatically. Not always, not perfectly, but naturally. A random idea would come in English. A sentence would form without effort. That was the moment everything felt different. Because that is when a language stops being something you learn and starts becoming something you use. The journey did not require expensive courses or complicated methods. It required something much simpler, but much harder: consistency. Consistency. Showing up every day, even when you do not feel like it. Semdi, especially when you do not feel like it. There was also a secret that became clear only after time. You do not need to understand everything. Everything to improve. Manged. Waiting to understand every word will only slow you down. Instead, focus on understanding the feeling, the idea, the message. Let the details come later, and slowly, very slowly, confidence started to grow. Not loud confidence, not perfect speaking, but a quiet belief. The belief that you can express yourself, even if it is not perfect, you know? And that belief is more powerful than perfect grammar. So if you are still waiting for the right method, the perfect time, or the best resource, stop waiting. Start doing this. Plan speak daily, even if it is just a few sentences. Listen daily, even if you understand only half. Think daily, even if it feels slow. Because one day you will look back and realize something surprising. Mond. You did not suddenly become fluent. You built it, piece by piece, day by day, and the person who once struggled to form a sentence is now speaking without fear. And not because the journey was easy, but because you chose to continue when it was difficult. And that is the real way to improve your English. There came a point when the journey felt almost invisible. No excitement, no frustration, just a quiet routine repeating every day. And strangely, that was where the real transformation began, because improvement does not always come with noise. Sometimes it grows in silence, in moments that feel ordinary. One afternoon, while sitting alone, a simple thought appeared in English without effort. It was not planned, not forced, not translated. It just came. For a second, it felt surprising, almost unreal. But then it passed, like a small wave. That moment was not loud, but it meant everything. Dawned. It meant the mind had started to accept English as something natural, not foreign. From that day, the focus became even simpler. Not learning more, but using more. Instead of searching for new techniques, the same small habits continued. Listening while doing daily tasks. Speaking, even when there was nothing important to say. Reading short and simple things without pressure. Writing small thoughts, even if they were not perfect. There was also a shift in attention. Before, the goal was to speak correctly. The goal became to express clearly. That small change removed a lot of pressure. Because communication is not about perfection, it is about connection. And connection does not require perfect grammar. It requires courage to speak. There were still difficult days. Days when words felt far away, when sentences broke in the middle, when confidence disappeared for a moment. But those days were no longer reasons to stop. They became part of the process. Just like a cloudy day does not stop the sun from existing, a difficult day does not stop progress from happening. Another powerful habit started quietly. Listening carefully to how others speak. Not just the words, but the rhythm, the pauses, the tone. Lay English is not only vocabulary and grammar. It is also music. And when you start to hear that music, your speaking begins to flow more naturally. Time kept moving, and something deeper changed. English was no longer something separate from life. It became planning the day, remembering something from the past. Even dreaming sometimes, all started to include English in small ways. And then came a moment that once felt impossible. A conversation. Not perfect, not long, but real. Bang words came, pauses happened, mistakes appeared, but the conversation continued. And at the end there was understanding. That moment did not just build skill, it built belief. Damned. Because belief is what keeps you going when progress feels slow. It reminds you that every small effort is adding something, even when you cannot see it immediately. So, if you are still on this path, feeling like nothing is changing, remember this. Change is happening, just not always in a way you can notice instantly. Every sentence you speak, every minute you listen, every thought you try to form in English is building something inside you. Start doing this, not for quick results, but for lasting change. Keep your actions small, keep them daily, and keep them real. Do not wait to feel ready. Do not wait to be perfect. Because one day, in a moment that feels completely ordinary, means you will speak, understand, and think in English without forcing it. and you will realize that everything you did, every small step, every repeated effort brought you to that point, and the most powerful part of the journey is this. Once you reach that level, you understand that you were capable all along. You just needed to start, and more importantly, you needed to continue. And then, something even deeper began to happen. It was not about words anymore. It was not even about sentences. Slowly, quietly, without any big announcement, you started to become a person who uses English, who studies it. At first, you did not notice it. Mond. It appeared in small situations. You reacted to something in English before thinking. You understood a joke without translating it. You heard a sentence and felt it, instead of analyzing it. Lengst. These moments were short, but they were powerful. They showed that the language was no longer outside you. It was becoming part of you. Shamda. There was a night when you realized you had spent the whole day interacting with English in small ways. A video in the morning, a few sentences spoken during the day, a short paragraph, read at night. None of these actions were difficult. None of them felt like heavy study, but together, they created something strong. And that is when the biggest truth became clear. You do not need to change your whole life to improve your English. So, you just need to bring English into the life you already have. If you walk, think in English while walking. If you cook, name the things you are using. If you work, describe your tasks in simple sentences. If you feel something, try to express that feeling in English. Lan happy, tired, confused, excited. These are not just words, they are daily experiences. And when you connect English to your real life, it becomes easier to remember, easier to use, and harder to forget. Mand. There was also a moment of frustration that returned, unexpectedly, a conversation where you could not express what you really wanted to say. Lamdi. It felt like all the progress had disappeared, but this time something was different. Instead of quitting, you paused, took a breath, and tried again with simpler words. And it worked. Not perfectly, but enough. That moment taught something important. Fluency is not about knowing complex words. It is about using simple words. Mond. The ability to explain your idea in different ways is more powerful than knowing one difficult sentence. Days continued to pass, and confidence started to feel natural. Not forced, not pretended, but real. You no longer avoided speaking. You looked for opportunities, even small ones. Because now, speaking was not a test. It was just communication. Another quiet change appeared in how you listened. Before, you tried to understand everything. Now you understood what mattered and ignored what did not. This made listening easier, lighter, more enjoyable. And surprisingly, you started to understand more by trying less. The journey was still not finished. Ma'am, there were still new words to learn, new situations to face, new challenges ahead. But the fear was gone, and when fear disappears, learning becomes faster, smoother, more natural. Yo. And then came a moment that once felt impossible to imagine. You helped someone else with English. Maybe just a small explanation, maybe just a simple correction made. But in that moment, you were no longer just a learner. You became a guide, even if only for a second. That is the power of starting small and staying consistent. So, if you are watching this, reading this, or thinking about improving your English, Understand this clearly. There is no secret method. There is no shortcut. There is only a simple path that most people ignore because it looks too easy. Start doing this. Live with English a little every day. Speak without waiting. Listen without pressure. Read without fear. Think without translating too much. Do not try to be perfect. Try to be consistent. Because one day you will not ask yourself how to improve your English anymore. You will simply use it, naturally, confidently, and when that day comes, you will not feel like you reached the end of a difficult journey. You will feel like you built a new part of yourself. Pamdens, step by step, without even realizing how far you had come. And just when it feels like the journey has settled into something calm and familiar, a new layer begins. Mengst. Not louder, not harder, but deeper. You start noticing the space between words, the feeling behind sentences, the intention in how something is said. English is no longer only a tool for speaking. It becomes a way of seeing and understanding the world differently. One quiet morning, you catch yourself thinking about something important, and the entire thought flows in English. Not broken, not slow, not forced. Just natural. You pause for a second, almost surprised, but then you continue without even questioning it. That moment does not feel like an achievement. It feels normal, and that is exactly why it matters. Your habits are still simple. Nothing complicated has been added. You still listen daily, but now you choose things that truly interest you. Stories, conversations, ideas that make you curious. Because when curiosity leads, effort feels lighter. You are not pushing yourself anymore. You are being pulled forward by interest. Cons. Speaking also changes in a quiet way. You are not just forming sentences now, you are expressing thoughts. You explain ideas, share opinions, even describe feelings with more clarity than before. Benyon. Sometimes you still search for words, but you no longer stop. You move around the missing word, you find another way, and the conversation continues. That ability becomes your strength. Demeans. There are still moments when you hear a sentence you do not understand, but instead of feeling frustrated, you feel curious. You listen again, maybe catch a few more words, maybe not. But you trust the process now. You know that understanding grows with time, not with pressure. Reading becomes more enjoyable too. What once felt slow now feels smooth. Your eyes move faster. Your mind understands quicker, and sometimes you forget that you are even reading in a second language. You are simply reading, and then something interesting happens. You begin to notice your own voice in English. Not just the language, but your style. The way you explain things, the words you prefer, doubt. The rhythm of your sentences. It becomes personal. It becomes yours. There was a time when you tried to sound like others, to copy accents, phrases, expressions, binda. But now you are not copying anymore. You are creating. Your English does not need to be perfect or identical to someone else's. It only needs to be clear and real. Another realization slowly appears. Progress never actually stops. Even now, you are still learning, still improving, still discovering new words and better ways to express yourself. But it no longer feels like a struggle. It feels like growth. And somewhere along the way, without planning it, you become consistent without forcing it. English becomes part of your daily rhythm, like something that belongs there. You do not ask yourself whether you should practice today. You just do it naturally. So, if you are at the beginning, or somewhere in the middle, feeling unsure, remember this part of the journey, the quiet part. The part where nothing feels exciting, but everything is slowly changing. Start doing this. Stay with it. Keep your actions small but steady. Do not wait for fast results. Do not compare your progress to others. Because one day, you will not measure your improvement by how many words you know or how perfect your grammar is. Che krepek. You will measure it by something much simpler. You were. Mliand. You will measure it by how easily you can be yourself in English. And when you reach that point, you will understand something powerful. You did not just learn a language, Mond. You opened a door to a new way of thinking, a new way of expressing, and a new way of connecting with the world. What? All because you decided to start, and more importantly, you decided not to stop. And even after all of that, the journey still has one more quiet lesson to give. A lesson that many people miss because they stop too early or rush too fast. It is this: true improvement feels ordinary. It does not always feel exciting, and it does not always look impressive. Sometimes, it feels like nothing is happening at all. Bomda. There will be days when you sit with English and feel slow again. Words that once felt easy suddenly feel distant. Sentences break. Confidence becomes quiet, and for a moment, you may think you are going backward. But you are not. You are simply going deeper. Because every time you return to the basics, you strengthen them. Every time you struggle, your brain is adjusting, reorganizing, building something stronger underneath. Growth is not always visible on the surface. One evening, you might find yourself listening to something longer than before, not because you forced yourself, but because you stayed interested. Monda. You follow the idea, even if you miss a few words. And by the end, you realize you understood more than you expected. Not everything, but enough to feel connected. Mond another day. You might write a few sentences about your thoughts. Nothing complex, nothing perfect. But when you read them again, you see clarity. You see improvement. Tomlings. Not in big jumps, but in small, steady steps. And then comes one of the most powerful moments in this journey. You stop asking, "Am I improving?" That question slowly disappears. Ranked. Because improvement is no longer something you are chasing. It is something that is already happening. Your focus shifts from results to process, from speed to consistency. Damned. From perfection to expression. There is also a calm confidence that begins to grow inside you. Not loud, not proud, but steady. The kind of confidence that does not need to prove anything. You know you can communicate. You know you can learn anything you need with time. And that belief changes everything. You also become more patient with yourself. Lamja. You understand that learning a language is not a race. It is a long walk. Some days are faster, some are slower, but every step counts. And maybe one day, someone asks you, "How did you improve your English?" You pause for a moment because the answer feels too simple. You did not follow a secret formula. Tomdia. You did not rely on one perfect method. You just started doing small things every day. You listened, even when you did not understand everything. Lamdance, you spoke, even when you were not confident. You read even when it felt slow. You continued, even when it felt difficult. And that is the part most people avoid. Damn. Not because it is hard, but because it looks too simple to work. But now you know the truth. So if you are still at the beginning, or somewhere along the path, do not overcomplicate it. Do not wait for the perfect plan. Start doing this. Keep it simple. Keep it daily. Keep it real. Because one day, without any big announcement, without any sudden change, Lambert, you will notice something quiet but powerful. You will notice that English is no longer something you are trying to learn. Uri, live Reno. And in that moment, you will understand that the real secret was never about learning faster. It was And even now, when it feels like the story has reached its calmest point, bleed, there is still something more waiting quietly ahead. Not a new method, not a new trick, but a deeper understanding of what it really means to improve. Monda. There comes a stage where effort becomes invisible. You are still learning, still growing, but it no longer feels like work. It feels like part of your life. You wake up and without thinking, you understand a sentence. You respond to a thought. You react in English. There is no pause to translate, no pressure to be correct. It just happens. Being. One day you might be listening to something and suddenly realize you are not focusing on the language anymore. You are focusing on the idea, the message, the emotion, and that is a powerful shift. Because language is only a bridge, and now you are walking across it without looking down, there is also a quiet freedom that begins to grow. You are no longer afraid of difficult words. Mond. You are no longer afraid of making mistakes. In fact, mistakes become almost invisible. They happen, you notice them, and you move on. They do not stop you anymore. And then something even more interesting happens. You start to enjoy the process itself, not just the results, not just the moments of success, but the daily interaction with English. Listening becomes relaxing. Speaking becomes natural. Reading becomes enjoyable. Writing becomes a way to understand your own thoughts more clearly. Blend. There was a time when you needed motivation to continue. Now, you do not. Because it is no longer something extra you have to do. It is something that fits into your life without effort. But even at this stage, growth continues. You start noticing small details, the difference between similar words, the way tone changes meaning, the rhythm of natural conversation. These are not things you tried to learn before. They come naturally when your foundation is strong. You also become more aware of how far you have come. Mund. Not by counting words or measuring grammar, but by remembering how it felt in the beginning, the hesitation, the confusion, the silence. And now, there is movement. Reigned. There is expression. There is ease. And maybe the most powerful moment comes when you realize you are not thinking about improving anymore. Mumsend. You are simply using English to live your life, to understand others, to express yourself. That is when the journey transforms completely, because at the beginning, English was the goal. Now, it is just a tool, a natural part of who you are. So if you are still walking this path, wondering if your small efforts matter, understand this clearly. They matter more than anything else. Every small sentence you speak, every minute you listen, every thought you try to form, they are all building something inside you that cannot be rushed. Start doing this. Just stay consistent. Lemders, trust the quiet progress. Let go of the need to see fast results, because one day, without even realizing when it happened, you will reach a point where English feels easy, natural and completely yours. And when someone asks you how you did it, your answer will be simple. You did not chase perfection. You did not wait for the perfect time. You just kept going. No. And in the end, that made all the difference. And still, there is one last layer that most people never notice. Because it does not look like learning at all. It looks like living. Bombed. At some point, English stops feeling like something you practice and starts feeling like something you carry. Not in your hands, but in your mind. Mond. It becomes the way you react, the way you interpret, the way you express small parts of your day without even planning it. You are no longer thinking, I need to study English today. Instead, you find yourself already inside it. A thought appears. And English is the first language it takes shape in. A feeling comes, and English is enough to describe it. D. A moment passes, and English is quietly there, without effort. There is a strange but beautiful simplicity in this stage. You do not try to impress anyone anymore. You do not try to prove anything. You simply use what you have built, naturally and calmly. And yet, learning never truly ends, but it changes its form. Now, you learn from everything. A short video teaches you a phrase. Dump a conversation teaches you rhythm. A mistake teaches you awareness. Even silence teaches you patience. There was a time when one difficult sentence could stop everything. Land. Now, it only slows you down for a moment. You think you adjust, you continue. Life does not pause for language anymore, and neither do you. Laned. You also begin to understand something deeper about communication. It is not about speaking fast. It is not about speaking perfectly. It is about being understood. And once you understand that, pressure disappears. What remains is clarity. Slowly, your confidence becomes quiet but steady. You do not need to feel ready to speak. You speak because speaking is normal now. You do not wait for perfect conditions. You create meaning with whatever you have. And maybe the most powerful change is this. English no longer feels foreign. It feels familiar. Like a room you have been walking into every day for so long that it now feels like your own space. You can still improve, yes. There are still words to discover, expressions to refine, ideas to explore, but the difference is, you are no longer struggling to enter the language. You are already inside it. And so, when you look back at where you started, it almost feels like another life. A time when you believed improvement needed something big. A special course. A perfect teacher. A secret method. But the truth was always simpler. Start doing this. Every day. Without pressure. Without delay. Without overthinking. Listen a little. Speak a little. Think a little. Repeat it tomorrow. Because greatness in English does not come from one big moment. It comes from many small moments that you refuse to skip, and one day, without even realizing it, you will notice something powerful. You are not learning English anymore. You are simply using it, living it, and expressing yourself through it. And that is the point where the journey does not end. It simply becomes part of you.